Hi everyone, I'm Katie. Welcome to week 2 of EmPower Yoga. And this week we're going to be focusing on our second chakra area that's associated with really our right to feel as human beings. And also with this chakra we have a lot of pent-up tension around our lower abdomen. The seat of this chakra is in the sacrum, like the bowl of the pelvis. So we're going to be doing some hip openers, we're going to be doing some twists, but we're mostly just going to be coming into tune with what we're feeling both physically and emotionally in our practice today. All right, so we're coming to a comfortable supine position, lying down on our back. And maybe that means you want to have a pillow under the head. And if you do have those lower abdomen kind of digestive issues today, as an option I'd like to offer placing a pillow or a block underneath the hips and letting them just be a little bit elevated. And we'll just bring our attention into the present moment as we notice those points of groundedness in the body. Noticing where we're connected to the floor underneath us. Underneath the feet, if you want to have the legs bent, or at the heels, if you want to have the legs straight out. Noticing that support at the back of the sacrum, whether it's on a pillow, a blanket, or the floor. Noticing the backs of the hands, the backs of the arms, upper back, and the back of the head. Noticing all of those points, feeling grounded and stable by the floor underneath us. And just beginning to breathe, noticing our exhale. Feeling how the exhale is pulling our body down. Feeling the chest rise on the inhale and then release on the exhale. And noticing without judgment whether we're breathing through the nose or the mouth. Maybe noticing how long your breath is with a count to 3 or 4 on the inhale. And then noticing whether the exhale wants to match that count or maybe it wants to go a little bit longer. At the natural pace of our breath, when we're in our most relaxed state, the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. So if you want to experiment with doubling that count on your exhale, see what that feels like. Continuing to breathe in that pattern for a few more breaths. And as you breathe, bringing our awareness to the sensation of letting go of the breath, of this body. Letting go of any distractions or chattering that might be in our mind. Any clutter, letting it fall away. As this practice today is focused on our second chakra at the low abdomen, this chakra is associated with our right to feel as human beings. Our right to acknowledge our feelings, understanding that they are valid, that we are valid in our perspective and our perceptions. And this chakra is also associated on the flip side with guilt. So if we have any feelings that we haven't really wanted to acknowledge, or any guilt that we haven't really been ready to let go of, this can be a place where we can let that go. Telling ourselves once or for all, I am sorry. I will say sorry and I will be sorry. Letting go of that guilt so that we can more freely acknowledge our sensations in the moment. And starting to bring a little bit of motion into connection with our breath. On our inhale, opening the hands wide, feeling a stretch between the fingers. On an exhale, closing the hand into a fist. On our inhale, letting it go. And exhale, closing the hand in. And really noticing that point of sensation when we feel the fingertips touch the palm as they close into the fist. Acknowledging that there is strength in letting go. That letting go is not a passive act, but that in opening our palm, as we let go, we are opening to new possibilities. The ability to move forward in our lives. And then starting to bring some motion into our hips. On our inhale, letting the legs open up, coming to a butterfly, bringing the soles of the feet together. And then exhaling them closed. Inhaling them open. Bringing our awareness to what we feel, maybe at the soles of the feet or deep in the hip sockets. The muscles across the groin. The engagement of the glutes, assisting with that opening of the legs. Maybe noticing if there's a change in the pace of your breath. And bringing the soles of the feet to the floor with our knees bent. On an inhale, gently lifting the sits bones up off of the mat so we feel a little bit of space underneath our hips. Exhaling, setting them back down either on the pillow or the mat. Inhaling, lifting up. Exhaling, floating down. And just like we did last week, if we want to, we can focus on where we feel that motion in the pelvic floor with our breath. Exhaling, it engages and lifts. Inhaling, it releases and expands. Giving yourself permission to feel the sensations in your pelvic floor, in your low abdomen, in the engaging of the glutes. And then setting the hips down. If you've been using the pillow, go ahead and set that aside. And then we'll take our feet a little bit wider, about mat width apart. And nice and gently letting the legs come to one side. Inhaling them to center. Exhaling to the opposite side. Inhaling to center. Going just far enough that we start to feel a little bit of sensation across the sacrum, in the hips as they start to open, in the spine as it starts to twist, keeping our shoulders down. And then maybe making it a little bit deeper if that feels like a sensation that you want to encourage. Maybe staying a little bit longer at the deepest point before you inhale the legs back to center. Maybe you want to feel some sensation in the neck as we start to roll the head in the opposite direction. Finding the stillness in your mind so you can really just tune in with the sensations that you're feeling in your body. And then if you like, letting the legs rest over on the left side and staying here for a few breaths as we start to feel that right hip stretch out. Option to take that left foot and bring it on top of the right leg to increase that degree of stretch through that right hip. Breathing into any places where you feel tension. Maybe you even feel your low abdomen start to stretch, or you feel something move that you'd like to encourage to flow. Sending your breath into those places. When you're ready, unwinding the leg, inhaling back to center, and then over to the right side. Taking that outside leg and placing the foot on top of the left side if you'd like a little bit more intensity through the hip. Breathing into that stretch. And on the exhale, giving that low abdomen a chance to empty out, to feel the pressure relieving from our lower digestive system. And unwinding. Bringing the legs back to center and gathering our knees in a hug, bringing both knees in. We can either have our hands on the knees or on the backs of the thighs, and making some really small circles with the knees like we're just tracing a teacup through the air. Really bringing our awareness into all those small sensations that we feel in the hip sockets or in the low abdomen. And then maybe you feel inclined to let those knees spiral out a little bit more open. Letting your breath be your guide, listening to the sensations that you're feeling in those joints. And maybe you want to make those circles as big as you can. Maybe you need to stretch out across the groin muscles and you want to just hold the knees open in an upside down frog position. Really breathing into the low abdomen beneath the belly button. On our inhale, feeling it expand. On our exhale, feeling it relax down. And bringing the knees into center. As you're ready, maybe rocking side to side, giving yourself a little massage across the sacrum. And as we're rolling, you can picture that we've got an orange or a ball that's sitting in our pelvis, right at the sacrum. And as we rock, we're rolling that ball side to side. And then, as you're ready, rolling onto your side in a fetal position. Taking a moment here, again connecting with the ground underneath us. And then when you're ready, using arms, pushing up, finding our way to a tabletop on all fours. Finding our nice stable tabletop position with our wrists underneath our shoulders and our knees underneath our hips. And pressing down into the hands so the shoulders are sliding down away from the ears. And for our cat and cow today, we'll feel like the motion is originating in the tailbone. And as we exhale, scooping in, the pelvis tilts, and maybe the chin comes down toward the chest. Like we're sending a wave up the spine, the tailbone rises, the belly drops, and the crown of the head lifts. Making that motion as slow and articulating one vertebrae at a time if you can. Really giving time for the lungs to open up in that cow pose. Rather than feeling like you have to move immediately to the next pose, giving a little bit of time at the end of the inhale and the end of the exhale. Feeling the sensations all the way up and down the spine, in the pelvic floor, in the mat underneath your hands and your knees. And then maybe, rather than just moving straight in this forward and back, up and down position of our cat and cow, ask your body if it feels like it wants to open up to the side. Maybe looking over one shoulder to stretch out the side body. Inhaling back to the center and then over to the other side. Following your own intuition as to what your body needs in this moment. Learning to feel and make decisions based on what we feel. And then maybe letting that motion become a figure eight as we start to move our shoulders forward and around like the top of a figure eight, and then our hips around the back like the bottom of the figure eight. Tuning in with what you feel as you flow up and down and around in your hips and your shoulders, in your wrists and your knees. And you might have intuitively gone in one direction that needed a little bit more help. Let's go ahead and go the opposite direction, bringing things back into balance. Often the opposite direction is the one where we really need to make a little bit more attention, as we often favor one hip or one shoulder over the other. Learning to connect our motions in multiple dimensions. And let's go once more the opposite direction, balance everything out. And coming back to our neutral tabletop position. Sinking back toward the heels, finding our child's pose. Option to let the forehead rest on the mat or the backs of the hands. If you need to make some room for the belly to breathe, you can go ahead and open up the knees. And connecting to what you feel in this pose, physically, emotionally. As this is a resting posture, we can take any time that we need a break, physically or emotionally. Letting the body sink down on the exhale. And reaching the hands forward, realigning the knees. Inhaling, coming forward to a kneeling plank. Coming far enough forward that we can feel how our abdomen is engaging to hold us steady. We're not letting it sink all the way down, but we're not in our tabletop either. We're finding that straight line position from knees to shoulders. And pressing down into the hands, opening up the chest a little bit. Exhaling back to child's pose. Inhaling to kneeling plank. Feeling that little bit of strength coming into our core and our biceps, our shoulders. And feeling the length in the low abdomen as we come into that plank. Maybe the hips just start to sink a little bit closer to the mat. And then meeting in our plank. Ooh, moving my pillow out of the way. And coming all the way down to the mat, keeping our elbows at our sides. Inhaling to our baby cobra back bend. And tuning into what we feel in our belly, especially if we're having any shortness of breath. Being comfortable with uncomfortable for a few breaths. And then pressing down into our hands, pushing up, finding our way back to child's pose. And this time, let's open up the knees and really sink down. Feeling gravity take over. Feeling the belly release. And then this next flow is one of my personal favorites, from our wide-legged child's pose to a hanging cobra. So we'll reach our hands forward from our child's pose position and shift forward like we were in that plank with our knees wide. And then if you want to keep going, bring the soles of the feet together, let the hips drop, and shine the heart center through the arms. Exhaling back to our open child's pose. Inhaling through that plank to our hanging cobra, and exhaling back. And being super aware of what we feel in the hips, in the low abdomen. Letting go of judgment or expectation about what we should be feeling in this pose, and simply acknowledging what we are feeling. Now, if this pose feels really good to you and you want to spend a little bit more time in it, you can come forward and stay here for a few breaths, making sure that we're pressing down into the hands, the shoulders are rolled back, and we start to press the hips a little bit further down toward the mat. If you like, the gaze can turn up. Just make sure we're not closing off the windpipe by tilting the head too far back. You should still be able to breathe openly. Letting go. And when you're ready, shifting back to that wide-legged child's pose. Taking a moment to breathe into the space between our hips and shoulders. Maybe you want to press into the hands and around that low back a little bit more. Sending the breath into the space we're creating between our hips and our ribs. And releasing, letting the chest sink back down. And coming up to all fours and down onto our elbows, so that the elbows are underneath the shoulders, and we can take the palms together, either palm to palm or interlacing fingers. And we'll come up to a dolphin pose, tucking our toes, floating the knees off of the mat, and leaving enough space as we press into our forearms that our head can dangle above the mat. Maybe pressing one heel at a time down as we stretch the hamstrings. And bringing the knees back down, reaching the hands out, tucking the toes, this time coming up to downward facing dog so we can lengthen the body. And looking up toward the hands, walking the feet up to forward fold. Maybe keeping a bend in the knees, letting the head pull down toward the floor. And coming halfway up to our monkey pose. Nice flat back, neutral spine. And bending the knees, sitting the hips back, inhaling all the way up to mountain. All right, so we've landed in our mountain pose. Let's open up to a wide-legged position. So shifting the weight from foot to foot, making sure that we can easily transfer our weight side to side. Our knees are tracking out the same direction as our toes. And inhaling, lifting up to our 5-pointed star, letting the fingertips stretch out wide. Exhaling, coming down, elbows in toward the sides. Inhaling, coming up. Exhaling down. And inhaling, rising. Flowing with your breath at your own pace. And bringing our awareness into what we're feeling as those hips open up. Our moonflower flow. And building a little bit of strength, let's stay here in this squatting position, bringing our elbows in toward the sides. Not all the way relaxed and down, but a little bit out. Feeling that energy through the fingertips. Making sure our back is nice and vertical, like we just slid down a wall. And then shifting to one side, opening up the side of the body as the top arm comes overhead. Inhaling, coming back to center. Exhaling, opposite side. Inhaling to center. Flowing with your breath at your own pace, feeling powerful and stable under your feet. Two more breaths, you got it. And coming back, inhaling, straightening the legs, taking the hands to our hips. If you have a block and would like to place it on the floor in front of you, we're going to be coming into a standing straddle fold, and it can be really handy to have something that will bring the floor up a little bit, especially if your degree of flexibility is such that coming all the way to the floor just isn't a good idea for you. So you might want to widen the feet a little bit, and also make them parallel to the side walls rather than before they were kind of pointed out toward the corners. Now we're letting those feet be parallel to the edges of the mat. And tuning in, taking our fingertips to those little creases where the thighs meet the hips. And then exhaling as we keep a straight spine, folding down, stopping halfway so that our torso is parallel to the floor. And here we can take the hands to the block. And this might be where we stay today, especially if we're dealing with any acid reflux. If you like, closing the eyes and just bringing your attention into what you're feeling in this pose. As we press into the edges of the feet, we start to feel a little bit more engagement. Maybe you want to use your sinking style breath to fold forward for a stretch of the inner thighs. Inhaling, elongating the spine, lifting the crown of the head. Exhale, deepening that hip hinge so that the chest starts to drop down. Rather than letting the spine round, really letting that hip hinge be driving your fold. Repeating that until you find an edge where you want to stay for a few breaths. Maybe you want to let the head hang heavy, pulling down toward the floor. Maybe you feel you want to open the legs a little bit further, toe heeling them wider. Maybe it makes more sense to have them a little closer together so that you can let the head hang a little bit more easily. It's all up to you. You're empowered to make your practice your own based on the messages that your body is giving you. And then taking the hands over to one side, bending the knee, stretching out the inside of the opposite leg. Walking the hands through to center, over to the opposite side. It might make sense to let the toes point out toward the corners again, rather than keeping them parallel. And shifting your weight side to side, foot to foot, little like Spider-Man. You might even want to make it a little bit deeper. Rock into the heel and flex the foot for a deeper stretch. And feel free to hold on one side or the other if you feel your body wants a little bit more time to savor that stretch. Meeting back in the center when you're ready. Finding your way to that halfway down position. And toe heeling the feet together. Sitting the hips back. Inhaling, circle sweeping up to mountain. And take a minute to adjust my little dangling cord that decided to pop out. All right. So we're going to finish the rest of our practice on the mat. Let's head down, inhaling up, exhaling, swan diving to forward fold, stepping back to a plank. Finding nice and stable in our plank. Maybe we want to have the knees down. Maybe we want that little bit more strength building of having the knees off of the mat. And setting them down, shifting to child's pose. And we'll come to a lunge. So if you want to step from your downward facing dog and swing the leg forward, you can do that. Or we can just step the right leg forward from here into our lunge. We're going to come first to our kneeling lunge, lifting up and starting with the hips aligned over the knee. Just taking a moment to feel comfortable and established in our base. And then taking our hands to heart center, moving into a twist the same direction as that forward bent knee. Inhaling to center. Exhaling into our twist. Same direction. Just getting comfortable with our range of motion in this twist. And meeting back straight ahead, taking our hands down. And there we might want to start shifting our knee back so that we start to find a deeper, lower lunge, where the hip will start to sink a little bit more toward the ground. This is another opportunity for a block. If reaching down to the floor isn't accessible for you, placing the hand on the block. And whichever variation you're in, we'll start incorporating that twist similar to what we just did in our kneeling lunge. We'll take that opposite hand, take it down the leg to the hip, and start opening as we roll that shoulder back and down. Option to take that hand up toward the sky. And another option, tucking those back toes, floating the knee off of the mat. Empowering yourself to pick your pose based on the feelings that you have in your body and your breath. If you are not really liking the kind of strength aspect and really want to sink down, just let that knee come down to the mat where it's more restful and opening for the hip. And unwinding, taking both hands to the mat and shifting our hips back, straightening the front leg in a hamstring stretch. Exhale, sink into that stretch. And let's keep that hip hinge so that we don't have to round the chest down, keeping the heart center elevated. And if we need to use a block again to make that happen, then we can do that. If you'd like to use 2 blocks, that can be really helpful. So you can just feel a little bit more supported in that stretch. And then we'll start flowing back and forth. So if you have your 2 blocks, you can use those the whole way through the flow. You can also do this with hands on the floor. Inhaling, rocking forward. Exhaling into that hip stretch. Inhaling, rocking back. Exhaling into the hamstring stretch. So we're inhaling when we rock and exhaling as we listen to the body and deepen into the stretch. Now another option that we have for those who really are feeling they want a deeper hip opener is our lizard pose, where we come to the forward position. I'm going to take my hands away from the block and bring them to the mat. That outside hand that's outside of the foot is going to come around to the inside. And then that knee can start to open up to the side as we tune in with what we're feeling in that hip. Now, if this feels really good to you and you want to sink in, we can come down to elbows. We can also place a block underneath the elbows if we want a kind of an in-between option. And for those of you who really want to get into it, we can take that hand from the inside, wind it around behind the leg so that it's back on the outside again. And the arm is coming into contact with the back of the leg. And this is the building block for our half firefly arm balance, which I'm not expecting anyone to want to do today, but if you're working toward that, this is the foundational pose to get there. In the half firefly, that's where we start floating that foot up and eventually lift off, but we're not going to be working on that lift off today. When you're ready, unwinding, bringing the hand back around to the outside of the foot and bringing it back into alignment. Shifting back to our hamstring stretch one more time. And then coming forward, stepping up to forward fold. Stepping back to our downward facing dog. And then we'll find that same sequence for the opposite side. So this time we're taking the left foot into that lunge. If we're in our downward facing dog, we can go ahead and lift that leg up, sweep it forward and place it down by the left hand. Or you can simply step through on hands and knees and bring that left foot forward. When you're ready, lifting up. For right now, keeping the hips aligned over the knee. So we're in a straight line from our hands to our shoulders, to our hip to our knee. Finding our balance. Feeling the sensations. And then cartwheeling the hands down, we'll come into that lower lunge. We can shift that knee back. We can place a block underneath the hand if you like. And I totally forgot to have us do our twist in that upward upright lunge first. So let's come back to that alignment in our kneeling lunge and establish our baseline for feeling this side in our twist. Hands at heart center, exhaling that same direction as the bent knee. Inhaling back to center. Exhale, twist. Inhale, center. Let's go a couple more times. Meet back in the center. And now let's come down to that low lunge. Shifting the knee back. Feeling the hips start to open as it lowers closer to the mat. Option to take the block underneath that right hand. And finding our twist in this low position, taking our hand to trace the thigh down to the hip, rolling that shoulder back and down. Option to float that hand up toward the sky. And unwinding. Coming back to neutral, taking our hands to frame that front foot and shifting back to our hamstring stretch. Again, option of taking the blocks, lifting the floor up a little bit, using that hip hinge as we keep the spine long rather than rounding the shoulders down. We're lifting up and out. And then as you feel you want to move into a flow, inhaling as we rock forward, exhaling to that hip stretch. Inhale, rock back. Exhale, hamstring stretch. If you'd like, closing the eyes, really just tuning in with those sensations, letting them guide your practice. Listening to the signals that your breath is giving you. Now for those who want a little bit more hip opening, we have our lizard. Coming forward, bringing the hands down to the mat, framing that front foot, and then walking that left hand to the inside of the foot. Maybe that knee will start to open out to the side. Maybe you'll want to sink down to elbows or elbows on top of a block. And it's really common for our hips to be asymmetrical. So what feels good on one side might feel different on the other side. If you want more openness on this side, if that's what you're feeling, taking that left hand behind the foot, back around to the outside, bringing that back of the arm in contact with the back of the thigh. When you're ready, bringing that knee back in, unwinding. Stepping back to child's pose. Sinking the hips back toward the heels. Maybe letting the hands walk over to the right side of the mat, letting the left side of the body stretch out. And hands walking back to center, over to the left side. And hands back to center. Coming up to all fours. Coming onto our seat. Bringing our feet around to the front of the mat. And taking our hands behind our thighs, rolling down. One more time, bringing our knees to our chest. We're on the home stretch of our practice on our way toward Shavasana. Let's take our block or our pillow and slide it underneath the hips. Finding a gentle supported inversion where we can really feel that low abdomen start to melt down. And letting the feet float up to the sky, pointing and flexing, making some circles with the ankles. Maybe taking the hands behind one thigh and lowering the other leg down into a split. And the switching sides. And bringing the legs back together. Taking the hands to the thighs, to the inner thighs, and opening the legs up into a straddle split. Again, we can point and flex the feet, feeling the sensations of the difference between the two. And bringing the feet back together. Placing the soles of the feet down. And staying here for a few more breaths in this gentle supported inversion, maybe in this position, or maybe in a butterfly, bringing the soles of the feet together. Following your own intuition based on what you feel. And bringing the legs back together, lifting the sits bones off of the block. And we'll finish with a freely flowing twist. So let's flow our left leg down, bring our right knee in, and start flowing. Exhale into a twist. Inhale, realign, switch legs. Exhaling, twisting to the other side. Inhale, realign, switch legs. Exhale, twist the other way. Finding our freedom based on what we feel. Maybe we want to stay in this bent leg version, or maybe we want to lift our leg up and drop it straight over the side. Letting our arms come out as a nice counterweight. Maybe you want to stay in that twist for a little bit longer, savoring it. Maybe letting the gaze turn over the opposite hand. And switching to the opposite side. And coming back to center. Realigning the hips. Taking any final postures that you need to complete the physical part of your practice. And when you're ready, finding your position for Shavasana. Finding your own comfortable place where you can let go of the work that you've done. And maybe bringing your attention to an affirmation to complete your practice today. I acknowledge my right to feel. I choose to let go of guilt, of expectation. I choose to trust what I feel. I acknowledge my emotions. I trust the guidance that my physical and emotional feelings give me. And if you'd like to return to that same relaxation breath, letting your exhale be twice as long as your inhale. If it helps to keep a count in your mind, listening to the beats, you can do that. Feeling a softness come into the face. Feeling the tongue release from the roof of the mouth as the jaw falls open. Feeling tension release from between the eyebrows. Finding your contentment in what you feel in the moment. Bringing our attention back into the room. Feeling motion returning to the body and the wiggling of fingers and toes. Rolling the head side to side. Reaching the arm overhead in a full body stretch. And gathering our knees in a hug. Rolling onto one side in fetal posture. And as you feel ready, pushing up to seated. And pausing here, bringing our hands to heart center. Acknowledging that our feelings and our emotions are valid, and that by tuning into them, we can tune in to ourselves, to our own thoughts, so they can better inform our actions. Thank you for inviting me to be your yoga guide today. And the light in me sees and honors the light in you. My spirit acknowledges your spirit. Namaste.